Today in Matt's class, we are going to talk form shadow and cast shadow. We're going to talk about how it applies to the human figure. All right, so to demonstrate form shadow and cast shadow, the best way that I can kind of illustrate that is with a sphere sitting on a table. So let's say we've got something, so we've got an image sort of like this, and let's say we've got a sphere sort of like this, and it's sitting on a table sort of like this. You're going to have light coming down like so, and you're going to have a highlight here, right? That's going to be kind of the bright side. And every time you have a three-dimensional object, half of the object is always in the light, half of the object is always in the shadow. If the light is coming over like this, you're going to have a scenario where this is kind of the light side, this is the shadow side. So it's kind of like the planet Earth. We kind of know that half of it's always in the daytime, half of it is always in the nighttime. But this area where it transitions is a fuzzy edge. It's not really a sharp edge where suddenly, boom, it turns into nighttime. It happens gradually. And this is called form shadow. And form shadow is really easy to remember because it rhymes with the greatest G.I. Joe ninja of all time, storm shadow. But every three-dimensional object that's lit by a single dominant light source is also casting a shadow. Cast shadow. And cast shadows have hard edges, so that's kind of the difference that you'll usually see between form shadow and cast shadow. So you'll have a shadow that has a hard edge, not a hard line, but a hard edge, and then this is all knocked back in shadow. So I've scribbled this in here really quick, but I want to actually draw this in charcoal. The important takeaway from this form shadow is a soft edge rolling into shadow. There is no point where this is officially in shadow. It's just kind of rolling into shadow. We can soften this. I can erase this a little bit more to really kind of show the light side. And then the idea is this is a form shadow soft. This is a hard edge shadow. It's the shape of this sphere casting onto the table. That's the takeaway. You've got your hard edges and your soft edges. Now that we've taken a look at that really quick, I want to show you how to apply that to the human figure. All right, so first I'm going to start with a basic sketch, and I'm going to try to fill up my space here. I'm starting with my gesture. So here is my basic stick figure. Now I'm gonna kind of map things out just a little bit more. She's got this bun on top of her head. Brow is here. I'm looking at the angle of the shoulders. Looking at like right here where the arm creases against the back, this is lower than this one. So this one's a little bit higher. The spine here, crease here. I see a connecting edge right here. Looking at the edge here, this needs to come over a little bit this way. Fix that. Better to fix it now than to have to fix it later. So this is enough to where I can start putting in some darks. I don't need to solve everything. A lot of this is going to be pushed and pulled. So the next step, I'm going to use some compressed charcoal and I'm going to start putting in some edges. Going to be a little tough because a lot of these edges I'm going to have to put in with my left hand to get the light against the shadow. So we'll see how this fares out. The back here has more of a hard edge on the spine here. So this is super rough right now, but this is just kind of blocking in a lot of this. I'm definitely gonna go softer and darker and harder edges with certain areas, but I think this is enough for me to start softening things up. All right, here we go. Softening in some of these areas here. And this is gonna make things a little too soft, softer than I wanted. But that's okay. That's just kind of the name of the game at this point. I can always erase and I can always define edges a little bit more. So the next step that I want to do, I want to start first. I'm going to use a blocky Mars white plastic eraser and I am going to slice off a piece of cheese. Blazing white it is under there. So now I'm going to use this to carve out some of my edges where necessary. So there's a little bit of highlight in the hair here. Definitely this ear is a little brighter here. The shoulder, I'm paying attention to the edge. Where is the hard edge? Where is the soft edge? Right here on the spine I can see it's a little bit lighter. Right here the muscles of the back are a little bit brighter. Definitely where the hip kind of comes out here, there's a little bit more of an edge. This dimple right here, it's brighter on the other side of it. A little bit brighter, catching a little bit of light on the other side of it. A little bit of light catching just on the other side of where her hand is. It's this cool process where you're just going back and forth, steering it closer and closer to where you want to go. But the big takeaway is your hard edges and your soft edges, and that's where we bring it back to the form shadow and the cast shadow. This is looking pretty good. I can kind of soften some areas here if it feels a little rough still. Now we're gonna go, we need to push that contrast even more. So I'm going to go even darker. I'm gonna break out the big guns with this charcoal, really big charcoal stick right here. Here we go. And anywhere that I see some really nice juicy darks, I am just gonna knock it in there. I'll be careful in some areas not to go too dark, except where I want it to be. It does get a little darker in here. Does get a little darker in here. So once again, this is a little too rough, so now I need to soften things again. So you'll notice I'm kind of going back and forth, making things softer where they're almost too soft, and then making edges harder where they're almost a little too hard. A little too much there, so I'm gonna have to erase some of that. Again, it's a back and forth process until you get it just right. Each time it gets a little bit closer as you steer towards the end result. All right, so now I'm going to move to my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to erase out once again. I can smooth some of this out with my fingers if I need to. Pull out a little bit of the brow. There's a little bit of light right in front of the ear. Erase this just a little bit more sharp. Kneaded eraser is nice because you can kind of chisel out edges, but because it's a soft eraser, you can kind of erase out soft areas where you need to have them. This edge of the hip coming out right here. Again, pushing hard edges and soft edges. Need to put a little bit more of a darker shadow right over here. Sometimes you don't know until you just start working it. Did I erase too much? This looked pretty good. Oh no, I erased too much. That should have stayed darker. And you don't know sometimes until you work on one area, and then that helps you kind of see what it was supposed to be for another area. And you just kind of chisel back and forth, back and forth. I'm constantly steering back and forth. I'm actually going to go back to where it all began, and I'm going to start adding in some charcoal pencil. Put some charcoal pencil right here, and steer some of this back in. This is just some loose details. Most of the shading was done with the bigger bricks of charcoal, and you're kind of focusing on some of those main areas, but this just adds a little bit of loose texture, and it's almost like you're indicating and making a suggestion of more detail than is actually there. I can really push where I want it to go darker. I can push edges more. I can kind of shade areas that need to go darker. I can carve out some of these edges that I want to be a little bit sharper. Soften areas that are a little too sharp. Soften where this rolls into shadow. It's just a little too hard jumping from one area to another. So with the pencil, I have a little bit more control over that. Some people would say, why don't you just use the pencil for everything? Well, it'll just take forever. So one of the great things about doing a lot of the erasing and a lot of the charcoal is you're just kind of spreading out a lot of tone a lot quicker. So you can kind of get those values in a little bit easier. And then it's easier to see where does it need to go, where do you need to steer it. If you just start with the pencil, you've got such an open canvas, you don't even know at the beginning, where do I go darker? Where did I go too dark? Chisel out some of these edges, work out the details in the fingers here. All right, so this is looking pretty good. But once again, it's all about back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So now I'm gonna go back one last time, and I am going to use my little pen eraser, and I can kind of erase out some specific highlights where I need to. See, we're already, this is starting to look like a silky sheen. I just have a little bit more control. It's almost like I'm drawing in these highlights. I can also erase lightly where I need to. Kind of have these, I almost see like highlights on the vertebrae. Sometimes a smaller eraser will give me more precision. Make it look like a sharper edge for this cube. Again, the idea is you are using form shadow and cast shadow. You're utilizing your hard edges and your soft edges. This is how it works. Contrast, light and dark, but also hard edges and soft edges.
Did you enjoy class today? If so, give me a like. If there's something you'd like to see me cover in a future video, let me know what that is in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, I've also got a video series called Sketchbook Challenge that helps your drawing, creativity, and fill up an awesome looking sketchbook. Plus, there are videos on You Can Draw Star Wars, Hollywood is Dead, and sneak peeks at the Aladdin 3477 Motion Picture Trilogy. In order to not miss any new videos, hit that notification bell. Sharing is caring, and it's great to inspire your friends. Share this video on social media and your friends will share awesome art tips they find with you. If you're on Instagram, you can follow me at Matt_Busch_Instagram. I'll see you back in the classroom soon. Don't be tardy.